Welcome back! In this lesson, we'll discuss some history of drainage because you have to understand where you've been before you can understand where you're going. This relates to that first learning objective. You'll also note that the slides will say history and extent at the top, but this lesson just covers the history and the next lesson has been updated with some new drainage extent information.
We've been doing agriculture for about 10,000 years, and so obviously, as you would expect, we have a long history of improving the land drainage because this is a central part of managing water right for agriculture. There's early mentions and early records and archaeological evidence of improved drainage around the world. For example, from Mesopotamia 9,000 years ago. We have records and mentions of improved drainage from the Indus River Valley 4,000 years ago. Ancient civilizations definitely realized that they needed to manage water right for agriculture. The oldest known preserved drawing or layout of a drainage system is of a rectangular ditching system from Egypt, and it was dated to about 250 before Common Era. Now, you all know Romans. The ancient Romans are famous for their aqueducts and baths and fountains, and they were proponents of improved drainage. In fact, the oldest written description of a subsurface drainage system comes from Cato the Elder, shown here, who gave instructions on the materials and the methods to use on how to do subsurface drainage. So you see from that little quote I've highlighted, the drain should be 3 feet broad at the top, 4 feet deep, and then you lay stones or willow rods in the bottom. So that's the first written record of a subsurface drainage system, and it's surprisingly specific. This is from about 130 to 160 before Common Era. The Romans facilitated the spread of improving the drainage for agriculture throughout Europe with little change in the methods over about the next 1,000 years. So when you think about the extent of the Roman Empire, which is roughly shown here, their heavy influence makes sense. And it's just pretty wild to think about the influence of history on a practice, an important practice like ag drainage that we still do today. Drainage here in the U.S. and in the Midwest has had a heavy influence from European drainage systems, which isn't surprising when you think about the European settlers who had a vision to farm the land more intensively than, for example, the original Native American inhabitants. And it was this development ethos coming across from Europe that really influenced our drainage culture here. There's evidence that clay pipes were used prior to about 1620 in France, but it really the use of clay pipes really became widespread after a clay pipe extruder or clay pipe maker was invented or patented in England in the mid-1800s. So this extruder, or this new production system, made it much cheaper to produce those clay pipes, like you can see in the picture. And so this became the widespread method of subsurface drainage for many, many, many decades following mid-1800s. Now, thinking about the history of the U.S. and settlement by the Europeans, we have a long history of drainage here in the Midwest. We have drainage legislations, drainage records, and even drainage works on the books prior to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, so mid-1700s, which is wild to think that we were doing ag drainage in this country before we were even a country, technically. So I think this is good history for us to talk about. The records of the earliest drainage works in the U.S. obviously came from the East Coast and the Mid-Atlantic, because those were the areas that were settled earlier by Europeans. And so the first documented use of tile drainage in the U.S. was in 1835 by a New York farmer who had imported horseshoe-type tile drain patterns from Scotland. Now, if you happen to be on campus and you really want to geek out on what old tiles or what people have used as tiles, you should visit the Ag Engineering building. On the ground level, there's what I call a tile drainage museum that's curated by Dr. Richard Cook. I use tile drainage museum in quotes very loosely because the display case that I'm showing you here is pretty much the whole thing. But if you want to see an example of tile pipes and even wooden drainage conveyance systems that people have installed or had installed this provides really interesting context. So if you happen to be on campus, run by the Ag Engineering building, this is on the ground level. You can't miss it. Just walk in and it's a long hallway, you'll see it. The next major drainage advancement came in the late 19th and early 20th century with the advent or invention of mechanized trenching equipment, not like what I'm showing here, but this replaced the need to hand dig tiles or hand dig trenches and lay those clay tiles in there. But this is approximately around the time that Henry Ford was doing his thing, so it was really a time in our country of a lot of advances in mechanization. In the late 1960s, fast forward, half a century, a project was undertaken by the USDA Agricultural Research Service, and kind of a side shoot of that research ended up being the development of what is now called the tile plow. And this is one of the most common pieces of equipment we use today to install subsurface drains. A drain plow creates an open channel in the soil without actually digging a real trench. It just kind of plows that tile pipe in, and this is done as this machine goes along. The corrugated plastic pipe is fed into the bottom of the channel at the desired grade or at the desired slope. This development happened alongside the development of plastic drain pipe, which is much more effective at conveying water than old clay tiles. I'm showing you this video, this demonstration, which is run by the Illinois chapter of the Land Improvement Contractors Association. It does a great job of illustrating how much more efficient plastic drain pipes are for moving water compared to the old-fashioned clay tile cylinders that you lay end to end. And tile plows today and tile equipment has a very high accuracy, real-time kinematic, RTK, GPS guided systems for controlling the depth and the grade or the slope and the location of the pipe installation. And that allows us to do very complicated, very sophisticated drainage designs like you see here in this picture from Indiana. While I'm talking about tile plows, I also want to mention there's another piece of equipment, large equipment, used to install drain pipes. This machine I'm showing here is called a wheel machine. You can see it has a big wheel on the front. The difference is that a wheel machine is used to install larger diameter pipes. Pipes like a main compared to a lateral. We'll talk about what a main and a lateral are in the next couple lessons. A wheel machine is used to install larger pipe, whereas a tile plow would be used to install smaller diameter pipe, like 4-inch diameter or 6-inch diameter. We'll talk about some of these concepts a little bit more, but I wanted to show you the equipment to start with. And that's it. See you next time.